Well, beep. Well, that's strange. Let me try that again. Beep, 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 beep. Oh, okay. I know what happened. I'm stuck in a damn TV, aren't I? I'm being censored. What the hell? Seriously? So I get a new streaming service put onto my TV. I'm sitting down with my cat. I'm enjoying some good old horror on TV. I press a button and it looks like I'm stuck inside the TV. Great. When will I learn? Every October, this happens to me. What happened 2 years ago? I had a doppelganger who tried to kill me. What the hell? I need to learn from my mistakes, honestly. This seems to happen every year. Not next year. I'm going to try and outsmart this thing. The good news is, this voice came to me. It might have been the voice of God, I don't know, but it was all in stereoscopic sound all around my head, echoing, booming, more. It did say, as long as I can survive 31 days, I will be able to get out of here. Yeah, I've seen enough movies where people get stuck in a TV to know what's going to happen. So I have to be smart and I have to remember all the lessons I've ever learned from horror to survive this one, I feel. Now, if you're expecting some type of grand episodes where I'm being chased through multiple stations on the TV, I hate to disappoint you. I don't have the licensing fees and I don't have the money to pay for those licensing fees. So you might have to deal with bad knockoffs instead. Fakos. But, there it is. So when I'm here, I might also talk about some horror with you. I mean, that's what I do every year. 31 days, 31 episodes. And yes, I was asked this. I do pre-record most of these. I don't record them on the day, every day, because that would just be crazy. I'd have to write it, shoot it, edit it, and release it. That's not going to happen. So I do tend to record a lot of these maybe in September, where it's getting close to October, but for the most part, it's just to save time. Because I'm still busy. I still have my normal life to leave as well. I can't stay here 24/7. There might be a few episodes that I forgot to do or hadn't quite finished that I'll touch up in October. But anyway, that's just to answer a question. So, what are we talking about this year? Well, normally I talk about horror movies. Maybe there's some theme about it, but it's normally about movies. Movies. Things on the big screen. I thought, why don't we change it a little bit? I'm going to talk about horror on the small screen. And when I say small screen, I'm talking about things that get released on TV. Yes, you might be watching this on your phone, which is an even smaller screen, but I'm talking about horror made for the TV screen. Not your phones, not your laptops, but things that were intended for the TV. For those who are really young, a TV is a thing that's in a living room. A living room is a place that you sit in to watch the TV and maybe have time with your family. A TV is a thing that lets you watch certain programs, something that you might watch on your phone these days. So that's a TV. All right, so I find the whole concept of horror on TV actually really fascinating. For us today, I think we just take it for granted that there's a scary show and it's on TV and we can watch it. And, it feels more and more recently they've become a lot more bloody, a lot more gory. They're really trying to push the envelope to a degree where people might start feeling a bit uncomfortable watching some of these shows. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But you can't really say that's a new thing as well, because it seems like every decade there's one or two shows that do this anyway. And horror by itself hasn't been exactly a new theme. I mean, it's been in, stories for thousands and thousands of years. And then, we saw it on the movies, probably starting around about 1910, 1913. Some would argue it's the first horror movies. And then we did get a kind of horror in the first installment of TV, but I wouldn't really call it horror. For me, really, probably the first horror TV show was The Twilight Zone. Do 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 do. Love The Twilight Zone. Absolutely adore it. I still watch the black and white episodes even to today. They're just fun to watch, and some of the ideas behind it are really kind of creepy still. But for I think many of you who watch, if you used to watch it, you maybe laugh at it, saying, "Oh, this is not scary." I want you to put your mindset though into people who was living during this time, because remember, horror is still it's still a pretty recently accepted genre. And what I mean by accepted is that it became a staple in movie genres, and it's become welcomed into the cinemas or the small screen. But it hasn't always been that way, especially back then. You know, it was horror was very frowned upon back during the 50s and the 60s as well. Really frowned upon. Like, there were like groups of people going out saying, you have to stop horror movies. You can't have horror because it's going to turn the children into Satan worshippers and they're going to come and kill the family and blah, 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 blah. It was something that people truly believed was sent from the devil. It was demonized. So imagine this mindset where it's like, okay, this is how we're seeing it, horror on the big screen. Now imagine how they thought when horror entered their house. You've invited these things that you demonize into your home. That probably had to scare a lot of people. Even the people who liked horror in the movies probably were still pretty freaked out being able to see it in their house. And like I said, even the stories, even from today's standards, might seem a bit tame. But if you take some of these, like the old Outer Limits, the old Twilight Zone episodes, and you really pick it apart and you look at it through like a psychological lens, some of them are really creepy if you really study them for long enough. Just ignore the effects, ignore some of the acting in some cases, but really study the script and the message in the script. It would have freaked people out seeing this in their house. So let's forward on. We're going to just kind of skip the 60s and 70s because for me, while there were some good, scary horror on TV back then, there's nothing that really just wowed me, just knocked me to the floor. There's a couple of things very good, and later on I'll be talking about that in another episode. But I'm going to skip on over to the 80s now. And the 80s were very interesting because the 80s for horror on the big screen in the cinema was huge. It was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Though becoming more accepted, it still was seen as kind of like an outsider's genre. And there were still groups who were still concerned about it. I mean, this is the same time when we got groups of people complaining about Dungeons and Dragons, saying it's Satan's game. So this is that same time period. But we were getting a lot more bloody, a lot more gory, a lot more stabby or what have you. And we started seeing more blood into the TV shows. But again, compared to today's standard, it's still quite tame and laid back. Then we're going to get into the 90s. And for me, I truly believe the 90s was the first, and in some ways, the only true golden era for horror on TV. Now, I know what you're saying. There's really good horror on TV right now, and I'm going to get into that in a second. I'm not being a granddad saying, oh, the TV back in my day was best. But there's a reason why I call it the first golden period. You could say today is kind of a second one, but I'm going to get to that soon. The reason why I call the 90s the first golden period is we got some complete game-changing kind of shows coming out. We got things like Twin Peaks, X-Files, Buffy, the remake of The Outer Limits. You had so many shows that really defined that era, and it really pushed the envelope on what was acceptable to watch on TV and what wasn't acceptable to watch on TV. Like I said, for example, Twin Peaks, naked girl found dead by the river. Come on, that creeped and scared the hell out of everybody who watched it, because guess what? On TV, we didn't see that before. That would not have been shown. And the materials behind that and how she died, that would never be spoken about before then. Then you got X-Files, where it's accusing the whole government of a conspiracy and killing its citizens. That would never have been done before. You got Outer Limits, so it's really trying to freak people's brains out. I think part of the reason why it's also called the golden period for me is there's a lot of thought brought into it. People really thought about the show that they're making, and they wanted to make a high quality show. They wanted to show that, hey, look, it's horror. Horror should be respected. And horror on TV can be just as respected as it can be on the big screen. So let's go forward now to the more modern times. I'm going to call it the late 2000s to 2020s. Now, the 2000s to 2010s, there were some great horror shows as well. But I feel, well, some of the shows were very, very good, and just as good as the ones in the 90s. There's nothing that really pushed the boundaries. But in the last 10 years or so, I really feel the horrors that's coming on TV shows, especially with all these streaming services, is really, really trying to do something new in some ways, but at the same time, they're recycling a lot of things. It's a curse and it's a blessing. It's a double-edged sword. You have so much variety to watch. If you want to watch something scary on TV, you have such a big selection now that you could just choose whatever you want. The problem is, it's almost too big of a selection. Like, there's a lot of stuff I want to watch, but I can't. I don't have the time to watch all these shows that are coming out. So I have to pick and choose. Sometimes I'm lucky, and it turns out to be good. Sometimes I'm unlucky, and it turns out to be complete beep. Damn censors. Yes, I know you're saying, well, why don't you just look on the internet? Well, I don't trust a lot of these reviewers. And I know it's ironic because I'm a reviewer as well. But I'm just speaking because of what's something I feel passionate about and what I love. You can agree or disagree. Cool. If I persuade you to watch something, that's great. If you still don't believe it's any good after hearing me, you don't have to watch it. But when I'm talking about reviewers, I'm talking about like the IMDb and the Rotten Tomatoes, those people who write the comments. I find a lot of times the things that they're reviewing, they have no idea what they're talking about. Or they don't give a good reason, or they don't give any reason. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the horror recently. It's become a lot more bloody, that's for sure. A lot more gory, a lot more nudity, a lot more of everything, really. Horror today is akin to the horror movies being made in the mid to late 80s. Because in the movies in the mid to late 80s, you had all that more blood, more gore, more nude, more sex, more booze, more going on. And that's what you have going on in the TV shows today. And a large part of that is because of streaming services. They can get around many things. They don't need to have to censor out a lot of stuff like we had to before when we used terrestrial TV. Again, this can be a good thing and a bad thing. So I kind of say today's horror TV is kind of like a second golden age, kind of. But the problem I have with saying that is because there's so much, eventually you're going to come across some good shows, right? You know, it's like if you roll enough dice, you're always going to get enough number 4s or number 6s or whatever. It's going to be a bit of a crapshoot. You're going to have the chances on your side if you watch a lot more of something being good. So I feel some of the horror today is a bit of like copy and paste. Like they're not thinking and they're really not set out to make as best as a show as they could. It's like, okay, well this sells, let's do 1, 2, 3, then 1, 2, 3, then 1, 2, 3. It works. Money. Man, you're so money you don't even know it. Now, I'm not saying, shows are like that these days. There's some very cool shows that are completely unique and awesome to watch. But I find a lot of them are kind of cookie cutter style these days. It's like, hey, let's see how much blood we can get away with. Hey, let's see how much nakedness we can get away with. But, again, that's just one person's opinion. My opinion. Just quickly before we wrap it up here, I want to talk about the differences between horror on the big screen and horror in the TV. So, even though you might be watching the same movie or seeing pretty much the same thing, there is a different feeling. And it coincides with why we watch horror. I mean, we watch horror because we want to be scared. We want to get out of reality and be scared in a different reality into something that can't actually hurt us because we're conscious that this is a movie that we're watching and this is not real life. And that's what this cinema offers you. It's a building, it's like a cocoon. It makes you feel safe. You know you're watching something, it can be scary, but you know the movie ends, you go home, everything's fine. Much like, the end of a lot of movies. I think, though, TV is a little bit different because you are watching it at home. And yes, you are home and you should feel secure in your houses. But a lot of the real world bleeds in when you're watching TV at home. You can't ignore the things going outside around you. Like maybe you've just watched the news channel and somebody broke into a house and murdered a whole family, and now you're watching a TV show about a murdered family. You're really not going to feel safe. Or maybe you're watching a TV show where someone is shut in and can't leave the house because they're being stalked or something about that. My point is that the cinema acts like a cocoon, a safety barrier, and you can isolate the differences between this is real life and this is cinema. I'm inside a cinema. I know this is not real. It's harder to do when you're home. You have to deal with your real life situations, and sometimes that's going to bleed into what you're watching as well. It's going to be kind of like, the number 6, if you keep on looking out for it, it's going to keep on showing up. But it's going to seep into your brain, be it consciously or unconsciously. You're going to be aware of the things going outside while you're watching the horror on your TV. And for me, that's what makes it a bit more scary in some ways. I mean, on the cinema, you got the big screen, you got the sound. That's all well and good, and that makes you feel engrossed in the movie. But just hearing the outside sounds mixing in with your TV sounds kind of makes something feel a bit more jagged, a bit more real, a bit more gritty. Like, for example, I forget which horror show I was watching, but there's police sirens going off on the TV show. And then it went to the next scene, and I kept on hearing police sirens. Like, what the hell? And it turned out that there was a bunch of police cars going past my house. But that totally intruded into my show, which really creeped me the hell out. So, I don't know. Let me know what you think. Do you think horror is more scary on the cinema or at home? Why or why not? I'm really curious about this subject. I'm not going to get into a whole why do we watch horror spiel. I did that last year and the year before. If you want to hear my thoughts on that, go back and watch that. But yeah, I think I need to find my way out of here because, I've watched enough horror to know if you feel that you're safe, you think you're in a safe place, you're probably not. So I'm going to try and find my way out of wherever this is. Because, I've tried getting out of the TV, see? Not let me out. So maybe there's a way to get to another station, another frame, somewhere else. So wish me luck. And remember, it's only TV. No, I'm not going crazy. Keep saying 31 days. You can do it, David.